It is time for Money, Power, Politics. We've got a lot to discuss. The president is escalating his global trade tariff war again. Swiss leaders traveled to D.C. earlier today after the president said he would slap the country, Switzerland, with a 39% tariff, which is one of the highest yet. That means your favorite products like chocolate, watches, high-end skincare could all cost a whole lot more if no deal is reached. And the threats didn't stop there. The president also said the EU would be hit with a 35% tariff if it does not invest $600 billion in the United States. And on top of that, he said he is rolling out new tariffs on semiconductor and pharmaceutical imports. As I said, we got a lot of ground to cover. Here to help me do it, Ron Insana, CNBC senior analyst. And Gillian Tett is here. We haven't seen her in ages, and I'm thrilled she's back. Columnist and member of the Financial Times editorial board. Mr. Insana, I am giving you the first question, and I want to start with Switzerland, of all places. This is a shockingly high tariff on a long time European ally. What is going on here?
Well, we do have a surprisingly large trade deficit with them, but still, it's an awfully high tariff. It doesn't make a lot of economic sense insofar as the items that you ticked off that we import from Switzerland are kind of fan favorites, if you will. I'm not quite sure what the motivation was behind this, other than we're seeing the president do this to each and every country with which he's trying to negotiate, which is jacking up tariffs higher to see if he can extract more concessions. Like you said, getting the European Union to put $600 billion worth of investments in the United States, the nature of which we don't fully understand, as was the case with Japan, South Korea, and other countries. And so it's very difficult to understand the process. I think it's safe to say, and we'll probably get to this a little bit later, tariffs are here to stay. They're not going away. This is a feature, not a bug of the Trump administration.
As Steve Liesman said a few nights ago, the tariff curtain has now been hung around the United States. But I want to talk about, Gillian, about what happened last week. It was a week ago that the United States and the EU agreed to a trade framework. And now the president is threatening them again. What does that tell you about the health, the validity, the honesty of any of these deals?
Well, what it tells you is that we have these big dramatic trade announcements that are basically made for TV headlines, made for tweet, X, and grab attention. But actually, whenever you have trade deals, normally you have pages and pages of the detail thrashed out, and none of that has emerged as of yet. And what's become very clear is that Trump announced these trade deals, said that the EU and Japan were going to invest in the US as a kind of quid pro quo. Both of the countries later said, we don't quite think we agree to what Donald Trump has said, or they're not quite in those words. And what you're now seeing essentially is the White House trying to increase pressure to stop them trying to argue about what or was or actually not agreed. And the point about tariff wars being here to stay is absolutely true, because on the one hand, you have a president who believes, and his economic team believes, this is actually getting more revenue for the US right now and helping it to deal with its mountain of debt. But at the same time, you also have a president who believes passionately that unpredictability and bullying and threats is the secret to him having weapons or leverage on the world stage. And so we're going to see more and more of these kind of unpredictable moves just to kind of shock everyone. And right at the beginning of his presidency this time around, I was asking one of his advisors why he was menacing Canada. And they said, it's just sport. He's like trying to show who's the biggest player on the field. And all of this is just more sport, if you like, to trying to demonstrate his power or what he perceives as his power.
All right, new topic.
Let's sport stuff. Just before we jump, it is a full contact sport. That's the problem with this, is that it's disrupting economic activity, not just at home, but around the world. And so it may well be sport, but somebody's going to get hurt.
Absolutely.
Much like a full contact sport. All right, let's talk about this administration, because the president said today on CNBC that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent does not want to succeed Jay Powell as the Fed chair, but there are a few others still in the running. Ron, what is your take on this? Because you've got guys like Kevin Warsh, who has a lot of respect from Wall Street, and then you've got guys like Kevin Hassett, who is in this administration. He was in Trump's first administration, and Kevin Hassett pleases the president on a regular basis, defending his policies, even those that don't make sense. We saw him tying himself in circles, trying to defend the president's position on firing the commissioner of the BLS. How tricky is this for Trump, though? Because he certainly would like to pick the guy who shows ultimate loyalty to him in Kevin Hassett. But in Kevin Warsh, that's a guy that the market is going to like. Both of those men have expressed that they're open to lower rates, which is what Trump wants. But what's more important to him? Who Wall Street likes or who likes him?
My guess is it's who likes him. And it's also interesting to go back in time. Kevin Hassett in the first Trump administration was the same economist who was involved in creating the so-called cubic model of the pandemic, of COVID, which he said would disappear by May of 2020, and then disavowed it actually being a forecast and kind of, there was a word salad around that creation that he was involved with. I tend to think Kevin Warsh would be the better choice, but the president also suggests there are two other individuals under consideration. I would assume that would be Governors Waller and Bowman, who both dissented from the decision last week for the Fed to leave rates unchanged and voted to lower them in July. So I think that those are the four that are in play here. It wouldn't shock me to see Kevin Hassett be named Fed chair. It would worry me more from an investment perspective if he won out over Kevin Warsh.
Which is why, Ron, we are going to find out what Trump really does. Is it Mr. Market who's in charge, or is it Mr. Trump? All right, new topic. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that the White House is preparing some kind of executive order that's going to punish the banks that it says discriminate against conservatives. Jillian, what is your thought on this? What is your reaction?
Well, this is once again more drama and distraction from the real issues. What we've seen today is President Trump has come out and accused both JP Morgan and Bank of America of discriminating against him by not taking his accounts after he left office last time. Both banks have been very careful not to flatly deny that or not to sort of accuse him of lying. Instead, they focused on what's really the bigger issue, which is a deregulatory agenda. And that's a point on which many banks and the White House agree, because the White House indicates it wants to keep deregulating, and the banks, unsurprisingly, just love that idea. So that's the real story around, banking right now. Who knows what Trump will try and do with this point about claiming about discrimination to get more leverage. But I suspect, once again, you're seeing an awful lot of shadowboxing or kabuki or whatever you want to call it. Distraction is the name of the game right now.